At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact on the first responder answering the call? From Titletown Publishing, and available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we are about to get started with Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out to patrons of the podcast, as always, as well as Facebook subscribers. Thank you all so very much. I wouldn't be able to do everything I do if it wasn't for all of you, my sponsor, and especially all of you who are here watching, listening, sharing, supporting, all of the above. Thank you so very much. It is Devil's Night. It's All Hallows Eve. Today is October 30th. This episode won't be coming out for a couple of weeks. However, either way, this is going to be yeah. My guests send me a private message like, boo. That's awesome. There's a lot of stuff going on. I actually am fresh back from the Arkansas conference. It was a great conference out there. I was out there. My good friend Don was out there. We both did a bunch of sessions and everything, and it was an excellent time. I had never been there before, and it felt like family right away. Just walking in, everybody was so welcoming, the hospitality, just all of it. So thank you, Arkansas, for all of that. And there's going to be an Imagine Listening session coming out from that as well. The room was packed, and there was just so many stories, the written stories. Arkansas, you've taken the cake on written IM 911 stories. There were 28 stories. And a few weeks prior to that, at the Indiana conference, there were 24. So Arkansas, you're at the top there, even with all of the out loud, like the stories that were shared out loud, all of that as well. It was just a very powerful session. And of course, we have an open mic that followed that up as well with some funny stories. So make sure to look out for that. Again, thank you to everyone at the Arkansas conference and all the attendees. Just meeting all of you, having a great time. It was very good. Last night, I had Dawn, who's actually my assistant producer for the podcast, and we did a Halloween open mic where we were talking about some of the creepy stories, creepy things that happen in dispatch. And man, the stories that people were telling, excuse me, holy moly. That was something else. There's going to be that episode is actually going to be a podcast episode as well. And we're going to be putting out some of, or an article rather, sharing some of those stories that people shared because some of them, man, like dispatch centers being built on cemeteries from like the 1800s. Yo, what? So there's so much more for that, but you'll be just look out for it. There'll be a lot of stuff that's coming up, but I am fresh back from basically almost a month and a half worth of traveling, and it was great. It was a lot of fun, but it's good to be home and just kind of chill because now I can get back to not only recording the episodes for this amazing podcast, but also for Dare to Be Great 5 that's going to be coming out this December 2023. It'll be December 4th through the 7th. Everything is going out there already for speakers, so make sure to check that out. And now, finally, without further ado, let's get to my guest. I'm excited to have Jeremie Meyer, RPL, and is also a public safety communications leader. Hello.
Hello, good morning. Yes, it is still morning. How are you?
You made me look at my clock really quick. I thought, wait,
It
is.
I have what's called time blindness, which we'll talk about later in what time blindness is and why I have it. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. And it makes me jump back to a story that I'll share with you really quick from early on in my dispatching career. It was when I first started in Florida, and excuse me, when I was working there. So it was 8-hour shifts, right? It was
Mhm.
one person on at a time, and our shifts changed every 2 weeks. So it was 6A to 2P, 2P to 10P, and then 10P to 6A. And once you were on that midnight shift, you were on that midnight shift for about a month, and then you went to mornings. So again, it's early on. I'm trying to get used to all of this because I had never worked in public safety before, never been in dispatch or this type of schedule or anything. And I was working the morning shift. I was working 6A to 2P, and I got home and I was exhausted after that shift. I went to sleep. I took a nap. Well, when I woke up, it was like 6:40 and I freaked out. And I ran to the living room. My grandmother is freaking out. She's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" She's yelling at me in Spanish. And I kept telling her, "I'm late for work. I'm late for work. I have to call them." And she just immediately starts laughing. And I'm like, "Why are you laughing at me?" And she just continues laughing and laughing. I call into dispatch, and my coworker Harry picks up, and I just immediately start vomiting from the mouth and just start saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm super late. I'll get there. I promise. If the chief is there, please tell him I said that I'm sorry." And I'm faintly hearing, Ricardo, stop. Ricardo, stop, as I'm still going and going and going. And then I finally take a breather, and he goes, "It's the same day." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Ricardo, it's the same day." He goes, "You just left here a few hours ago." He goes, "It's 6:40 in the evening."
Been there, not quite that bad, but yeah, I've woken up dazed and confused.
Oh man, that it happens. It definitely happens. I'll never forget that because my grandmother, God rest her soul, she she was just laughing at me. And when I got off the phone, I looked at her, and she's like, "I was gonna tell you, but
Oh,
like,
she wanted to see it through. She was loving
oh, for sure, yes."
it.
Yeah, she was just gonna let it go, and she did. She did,
Yep.
and she was laughing at me afterwards, and she's like, "Well, do you wanna eat dinner?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." Oh, man. Well, Jeremy, it is awesome to have you here. I'm super stoked, and just for, like, everything that we're gonna be talking about as well. So let's jump right in, you know? How did you, get started in public safety to begin with?
I actually got into public safety. My uncle was the captain in charge of the training department for the sheriff's department in the county I lived in Western Mass. And back in the day, they had what was called the Reserve Intermittent Police Academy. It allowed people to work for small departments or departments part time. So he asked if I'd be interested in going. I said, sure. So that was really my first taste of public safety. I went to the academy. I worked for the Sheriff's Department on the Law Enforcement Division on their dive team. I worked for a town, South Hadley, as a special police officer, which is, basically volley or part-time. I also got into call force firefighting in EMS. And my brother at the time was a newer criminal investigator for the U.S. Army. So he was still not a warrant officer, still sergeant rank. And he said, Jeremy, you need to pick one. So I was like, well, I've been applying for full-time jobs. I've been taking civil service. I always did lousy with them. I was working security at the time, full-time, in security dispatch. And I was doing really well, and I really liked it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try dispatching. Back in '92, I went to the then Massachusetts Enhanced 911 training because I was working at a state college, so I was able to get into that, and that's what got the ball rolling for public safety dispatching.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So okay, so you have it in the family already, so that
Yeah.
you had that taste coming in and everything. How quickly do you feel like it got into your blood, though?
I was the kid who wanted to be a cop when I grew up.
Hmm.
My brother did not. My brother's degree in college associate was all business stuff. He went into the military because it paid for school. But then he went active duty as an MP, then an MP investigator, then as a criminal investigator, and did his career, as a criminal investigator for the U.S. Army, retiring as a special agent in charge. So it's always been, I think, in me even as a kid. Not really dispatching because back then I don't even think dispatching existed, at least civilians in my area.
Yeah.
Back in the day. But, once my uncle, opened up that door for me, it was quick. It was real
Wow.
quick. Yeah.
So when you got in there, was there even from the beginning before dispatch or anything like that? But if you want to kind of compare and contrast a little bit on those early beginnings, just like kind of walking in, was it overwhelming, or was there anything that surprised you, or was it kind of the way you thought it would be?
The academy, the dispatch, the police academy was pretty much what I thought it would be.
Hmm.
Fire service on the call force or volunteer side was just what I thought. EMT, same thing. When I got into, working as a special police officer or even a dispatcher, there was no real on-the-job training. There just wasn't. There wasn't any leadership. There wasn't any. There just wasn't anything formalized. It was very much here's the mic, here's the computer, here's the phone, good luck. There was no training required in Massachusetts at the time outside of their E911 course, which was just how to operate their E911 equipment. That's it. Even like Massachusetts CJIS, which is NCIC, there wasn't really any training. It was flip through this huge binder and then take the security test. So, early on with my uncle being in charge of the training department, many Thanksgivings, many Christmases of him and I talking about how it's done wrong and how it needs to be done better. And that stuck with me my entire career, and is one reason why I wound up back in '04 becoming an instructor.
So I kind of feel like through those conversations and everything, you really wanted to leave 911 in a better place than what you found it.
Most definitely. In whatever way I could, in whatever small way I could.
Yeah. Oh man. So you're coming through all of this, and you talking about just kind of getting thrown into the lion's den kind of makes me feel like my first night in dispatch as well. So just to kind of compare a little bit, so 2001, I go in for my interview and everything. I don't hear anything for about 2 months, so I thought, I guess it didn't go well. And then the chief just shows up and asks me if I still want the job, and I said yes. And he goes, "Well, you start tonight." Now, I was
Right.
thinking, right, usually when you're starting a new job, maybe it's the following week, right?
Mhm.
Something like that. But no, he was, "Tonight's your first night." And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Well, you want the job, don't you?" And I said, "Well, I do. I just didn't think it was gonna be starting that fast." And so I go in that night for a 10 p to 6 a shift. I go and speak with I meet my trainer, and he starts showing me some of the things in there. And his name was Harry. All I can say was that he was a very seasoned dispatcher, maybe slightly crusty, but very, but a very cool person.
Yeah.
Harry was awesome, man. And he takes a 911 call, right? And I'm standing there watching him as if it's like some sort of National Geographic episode that I'm watching, because 'cause I'm just in awe, like, this is my
Yeah.
first time, and I'm watching this. My only experience up to that point, work-wise, really was like, it was retail management is what I had,
Mhm.
and the only thing that I had to go off of for 911 was the Shatner show,
Yeah, Rescue
Rescue
911.
911, right.
Yeah.
So that's what I have in my head. I'm like, "When's the caller gonna come?" Right? So we so I'm watching him, and then he finishes, and I think I actually went like, "Well done, like, that was awesome," and he's just kinda looking at me like I'm a nerd, but then, he goes, "Well, you're next." And I said,
Yeah.
"What? Are you are you for real?" And he goes, "Yeah, you're next." And I said, "There's no other training? Like, that's it. Like, this is it." And he
Mhm.
goes, "The only way you're gonna learn is if you jump right in, you learn while you're on the job." And I said, "But there's nothing else." I said, "We're just talking to people like that? Like, isn't there some techniques or something?" And he goes, "Look, you need to have thick skin, you need to have
Mhm.
common sense, and you have to be human." And that's really, everything that it takes. I did go to a 1 week, like a 40-hour beginner's dispatching course, like a
Yeah.
week or 2 later, but that was my first night.
Yeah. 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 Throw you to
Oh,
the wolves.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it is, and just like
Yeah.
the way you're talking, you get thrown in, and they're like, "Here's a piece of paper, pencil, or pen, or whichever, and here's the
Right.
radio," and you jump in, and man, things have definitely changed since those
Yes.
times.
Yeah. They yes and no. Um, my last position,
Mhm,
I made those changes because uh, in the state that I live in now, a lot of it hasn't changed. A lot of it is, for whatever reason, is okay. We'll put you through OJT, and it's typically not formalized.
mhm.
And when and if we can get you through a 40-hour course and an EMD course, we will. Um, when I was offered this job, I said, before I accept, this is what I require is that we will do a 4-week dispatch academy.
Yeah.
They will get all their certifications. They will learn about all the equipment that they're going to use in the classroom, followed by a formalized CTO program with certified CTOs, DORs, the whole nine. Um, I said, otherwise, thank you, but no thank you. I said, because police officers don't do it the way you're doing it with dispatchers right now. Firefighters, EMTs don't. You
Right.
know, uh, it's not acceptable, and it's worked. Recruitment has increased. I was at 42% staffing when I came in, which was 17. They're at 30 right now. Retention has increased significantly, and it's all been contributed to the training program.
Wow.
But there are still a lot of agencies out there, outside of areas like Massachusetts where, you're required to have this, this, and this, and they keep an eye on it. that just they don't, and that's scary. You
Yeah,
know.
very much so. So as you're mentioning this, I want to touch on this really quick while we're fresh on this topic. As we're talking about retention and short staffing and everything, but keeping folks in this profession, in this career, because words matter. It is a career. This is our profession.
Yes.
And so in your opinion, as you've been working with this and that retention rate has gone up and everything, and you went from one number to a higher number and everything, what are your thoughts on how across the nation we can really work on this short staffing? Like there's a lot of variables, right? There's money, there's benefits, there's all this other
Yeah.
stuff involved, but there's also the basics, the foundation, which really is communication, recognition, and things like that. In some places do not care. Some places
Right.
do not recognize. So, do you feel like that's kind of a big piece in that
That
as
that
well?
that is the bigger piece.
Mhm.
Um, you know, no matter what industry you're in, the number one asset where the most money is spent, where the most money can be potentially lost, is your personnel. No different in public safety communications, none whatsoever. We need to recognize our people. We need to applaud them. Um, you know, we need to make that recognition public. We need to make the public aware of not only what we do, but that there are humans on the other side. That is so much more important than the pay. I know departments that pay $10,000 more an hour. I mean, a year than my last department, um, and they're having the same problems. I know places that are paying $3,000, $4,000 less, but don't have the problem. And it all stems from what are you doing? Now the unions will always say more money, more money, more money. And I
Yeah.
get that. Yeah, I would love to see them make more money, but they're never going to be satisfied because tomorrow they're going to say we want even more money. Uh, they need to be recognized. They need to be not the bastard children, the redheaded children, whether they are part of a police department or a separate entity, they need to be recognized. When major calls happen, and you hear in the press that the police department got tips, well, yes and no. Where did those tips come from? Where did all that information gathering come from? Why aren't the dispatchers being mentioned? That goes such a long way. And unfortunately, sworn officers, command staff just don't get that. They don't get that we're civilians. We're yes, we're the same, but we're not.
Mhm.
And that recognition goes a very, very long way. Not just recognition during National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week, but when
Exactly.
you have a massive 5 alarm fire, thank the dispatchers for everything they did, because not only did they manage that, they managed everything else that was going on in that 12, 16-hour period throughout that town or city. Any type of major event. We had an event where a gentleman at some kind of mental health halfway house got dismembered with a sword. That's a major call.
Mhm.
We should have been, thanked. The officers were, the public information officer should have said, the dispatchers did a great job handling, that happens too often where we're not included. Little things like that, dispatcher of the month things. I've always tried to do stuff like one of my dispatchers, like a week after she finished all her training, helped deliver a baby using EMD. She got a stork pin, and I got the press there. I thought that was important to put out. any stuff from that to they all were recognized when I first came on for the amount of work, stress, inverses, mandates, whatever you want to call it, during the pandemic. So they all got COVID accommodations in PINs. That's important. Anytime that I heard about a big call or a good call, I would give them a written letter of accommodation that went to them and into their personnel file. To just, you did a good job today. I even went as far as inside the two doors going into the building. It was, through this door is the, city's first responders. But then going out, because I may not be there or I might forget, is thank you. You made a difference today. So just a little sign like that. That's key. That is what will keep your people there. Professional development, in-service training. I always tell my people that if there is a certain area within dispatch that they like, I will gear their professional development towards that. Or even if it's something that's not within public safety dispatch, but might be like domestic violence coordinator type stuff, I will try to gear their professional development because it's about their success.
Exactly.
And ultimately, that is, that's going to create a solid team. When I started this dispatch academy, the CTO program, a lot of backlash was, well, they're just going to take that training and go elsewhere. I said, good. They're like, huh? I said, good, because what's going to happen is our agency is going to get the reputation of having outstanding training. That's free advertisement.
Yeah, it is.
And I got that. My mom worked in clothing retail. And there were times where we don't have this product. Go here. Okay, is that counterproductive? Yes and no. No, because they're looking for that. But you know what? When they're looking for something that her store has, it's going to be the first place they think of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They're going to think about that customer service, the fact that the person wasn't just trying to keep a sale or anything. They wanted to be helpful. And you're right. They'll end up coming back to be like, "Hey, you helped us with this one thing and we're coming back because this is a place." And it goes, both ways as well. As you're talking about that professional development, I think that's one of the big things that a lot of people are doing right now as well in their centers is they are pushing a lot of that professional development to keep that flame going. Because, for me, as we were talking before we started recording, when I hit that burnout and I went back to school and I was working on all these projects, what I thought was really destroying me at the time inside, which was what I was doing for a living, it actually saved me because I was pushing all of this content out and trying to educate the public and others within, field response to show them what it is like for us and how this impacts us. And people started switching their mindset on that, and there was more of that recognition and everything. So like for yourself or other centers out there that are really pushing in the sense of recognizing their folks, man, that feels so good to have that recognition. And no, we don't need a thank you all the time or anything like that, right? But to get recognized every so often, those are those wins that we need, that we can look back on after having a hard day, after having a hard call, to think and to also remember this is why we do what we do. And this is why
Right.
people stay.
Yeah. To get to the burnout too,
Yeah.
big advocate of mental health, stress management stuff. So not only is it covered heavily in the dispatch training, but in the break room, I have folders on the wall of a whole bunch of stuff regarding critical illness, stress management, burnout, the whole nine. And I put it in the break room because then if people want to just grab the different flyers. They can a little bit more discreetly. I even have one that's in orange that they can put on the refrigerator, which is for family and friends. Um, I'm always there as a peer. I will take off the directors or leader cap and talk to them. And if they want to speak to somebody, I will find a peer within the state that will talk to them and stuff. And I might check in with them a week later, just say, hey, how you doing? But that's it. I don't get involved in the conversation because as a peer, that's not, my job.
Right.
My job is to listen to them, give them the tools, and if need be, find somebody that can help them out. I also put on like every position I don't know, it's probably like 20 pages long, dispatch console yoga. It's just little yoga things you can do at your desk to help either because you're stuck at the desk for 16 hours. It helps with stress, physical and otherwise. I have, information about burnout and preventing burnout that I make available to my people. And like we were talking earlier, I've had a dispatcher who, went right out the gate going 100 miles an hour. And I would every once in a while remind the person, I just don't want you to 6 months down the road, hit the brick wall and then burnout, resentment. I hate this job, so.
Right.
It's important. It's important to pace. I understand, especially, you're young, you're probably trying to get college debt taken care of and stuff, but it really is a life-work balance. And I've always said it that way, life-work balance. So.
I believe it. And that it is an excellent approach. Thank you for being you and having that approach, because there's a lot of places that don't do that. And I feel for those folks there at those places because, you'll sometimes get them, at a conference or whether it be state or nationally. It's like, this is the first time we're ever getting a chance to come over here to do this. And I'm learning so much. I'm hearing so much. And this is not stuff that we do. And you feel for them because there are still some places, hell, there's still some places, even in Michigan, there's some spots where like 911 is not even a thing. You would think 911 is everywhere. And people who are listening and watching this right now are probably thinking, no, this is fake. Like, are you for real? No, there are.
There are some counties that just have no money.
Yeah.
It really depends on how the system is set up. Is your county even getting any of that surcharge money? And it's probably not enough to set up even an enhanced 911 system, never mind a next-gen 911 system. So, yeah, there are a lot of places out there in going into the Dakotas and stuff that do not even have, 911. They just don't.
It's still the 10-digit line. Yeah, you're still calling it a 10-digit line for fire or police or EMS or whichever, however. But yeah, it's a 10-digit number that the people are taking advantage of there, and it's like, what? It's 2023, but it's not like that everywhere. It's craziness, So slipping back really quick.
Sure.
So for you in the beginning, though, when you very first started into dispatch, what was that like for you in the beginning? So you're going in, you're going through training and all of that. Was it almost like immediate, like, yeah, this is what I want to do, this is awesome? Or were you kind of nervous like a lot of folks?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. It's funny when I worked for a center where I had to have a 40-hour course. I wasn't allowed to sit at the console until that course. So I sat, basically in the back row. And I was given I forgot whatever edition, the APCO 40-hour course was back in the early 2000s. So I read the book and then I took the course. And the instructor literally read the book verbatim.
Verbatim.
Man. Yeah.
A lot of
Um,
iced coffee during those days.
I got 100 on the exam because I basically read the book twice.
Oh, well done. Congratulations.
um, but again, there wasn't really that much on the job training.
Yeah.
On the equipment, yes. On the CAD, yes. But on how to do the job, no. Uh, and I almost quit because of a call that I took, and I misinterpreted what the mother was saying. I was taking what she was saying as her son wasn't listening to her.
Mhm.
Uh, it was her son was unresponsive. That's a
Oh,
medical
man.
call.
Yeah.
I submitted my resignation to my chief. Now, I've known the chief because he used to be a sergeant in my hometown. So I've known him, at least that way for a while. And he brought me upstairs. He's like, I'm not accepting this. He told me why. And I appreciate that because I was like, oh my God, I could have killed this kid,
Right.
you know. That was probably one of the earliest calls that I remember. I've had an earlier, funnier call, but that was
Mhm.
probably the earliest serious call that was like, an oh crap moment. So,
Wow. So, what's awesome though is your superior there in that moment saw something in you and actually told you no
mhm,
because and explained, and went through all of that with you because that person could have just said, "Okay, go,"
yep,
split. But they didn't, which is awesome, and
it is.
now you've got, what, like, almost a 31-year career now in public safety, but
Yep,
you had that moment, and I think a lot of us have had moments where you end up taking a call and, no matter how it goes, sometimes you think, am I gonna be able to do this? Like, is this
yep,
really? Because like, my transition from being a one-seater PD, one dispatch on at a time for 8 hours, coming back to Southwest Michigan to now working as a central dispatch, separate entity from the sheriff's department, and there being 3 to 4 people on at a time in a team, it was a completely different dynamic for me to get used to, for 1,
yeah,
and 2, the call volume was
mhm,
way, way more than the little small city PD. I mean,
right,
there was a lot of stuff coming in, and I remember some of those first calls when I was in training and thinking, I don't know if I have the I don't know if I can do this, but also the training at the time that I was taking, there was that could be a whole different episode. There was a lot
mhm,
of stuff that happened during that time,
yeah,
but I stuck with it and kept going, and like, here we are, man. Like, we had people in our lives that ended up telling us, "No, you can do this. Let's continue," and maybe they said this to you or not, but for me it was, let's continue, but if you really feel like afterwards that it's not for you, then maybe go. But that's
right,
I needed that little, kind of, not only kick in the ass, but also, that recognition and support to make
yeah.
me feel comfortable to be like, "Yeah, no, I can do this."
Yeah, no, he definitely gave me the support.
Yeah.
It wasn't just blind support. It was learn from it.
Mhm.
But there was definitely support, and he wanted me to stay and learn. He knew that me leaving, I wasn't going to learn. You know,
Very true,
um,
yes.
this was the same guy who in January of '04, when I said, "Hey, I got headhunted by the U.S. military to go over to Kuwait to set up, uh, you know, uh, a dispatch center for them." He said, "I can give you 6 months, leave as a safety net." Didn't have to do that, you know,
Wow.
but he wanted me to know that if I got there and I was like, "Well, this is not for me," I would be able to come back, which I'm thankful for. That meant a lot to me.
That is great support there,
Yeah,
yes. Oh, man. That is amazing. So
Yeah.
you had all of this going on. That's one of the earlier ones that you remember that, kind of sticks with you as well. And, I remember in the beginning a lot of different things happening where there were there were calls that I thought, "Ah, this can't be real life. Like, is this really going on right now?" So
Mhm.
this call wasn't mine specifically, but I was sitting next to my partner and listening in as this was going on. As you mentioned, you kinda have a funnier one early on as well, but this one, my partner had taken a call from someone who was, he was an older gentleman, and he just kept saying, "There's someone walking back and forth in front of my window," and he sounded very concerned, maybe even mostly disturbed rather, and she goes, "Well, can you describe the person? Like, what is the person doing? We already are putting it out there that someone is,
Yeah.
uh, like a disturbance, like a disorderly or something that's going on." Well, what it was the guy was walking back and forth in front of the house, in front of the big living room window on stilts. But not just on stilts. This gentleman was fully naked
Ah,
and
well,
and kept and
what else do you do on stilts?
right, yeah. And they just kept walking, and the person just kept walking back and forth, and I could hear, because I was monitoring the phone, I could hear in his voice just how disturbed he was. He was like, "Can you please just get someone over here?" Well, by the time the officer got out there, the people were gone, or the person was gone rather, but what they think was going on is because that house was close to this local college, that it was like a initiation for
Ah,
one of the fraternities or something over
yeah.
there.
Growing up in Amherst, Mass, we have three colleges. University
Uh-huh.
of Massachusetts being the largest one, it doubles the town's population. I'm very used to uh, college stuff. We'll say. I grew up with it.
Well,
So
so what was the that funnier earlier one that you had then?
I was working in a very small town, part time, overnight shifts on weekends. And the way the consoles were set up is you weren't facing the front window, you weren't facing anything but the console. So I'm sitting at the desk, and all of a sudden I feel my chair roll back and then kind of get pushed forward. So my first instinct was, okay, one of my cops is messing with me. So I turn
Yeah.
around and there's nothing. And then all of a sudden the phones start ringing. And what it was is there was an earthquake up here in the New York area that just basically was felt down on the Connecticut Massachusetts border. So, right around sunrise. So everybody's starting to call. So thankfully, no damage. But it was just funny that I automatically thought, okay, one of my officers is messing with me. And startled me because I'm like, what the heck, Um, so you know,
What?
yeah. And it's funny because the town's emergency manager called me and I'm kind of giggling. He's like, what? So I explained to him, what the chair did and what I thought was happening and stuff. So, yeah, it was kind of a silly moment where it could have been a serious call if it was, a real, earthquake down there.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh, holy moly.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna tell me, like, it turned out to be, like, some sort of ghost or something like that, but I
Yeah.
mean, earthquake, from a
Yeah.
different area that you guys ended up feeling, I mean, that
Yeah.
that has gotta be pretty nuts too because, funny enough, when I was working at the Central Dispatch in Michigan, I don't remember how many years ago this was now, if it was in 2010 or 2011, whenever it was, but I had worked, a 16-hour shift. I worked from 4:30, in the evening till 9 in the morning the next day,
Yeah.
and because someone had called in, and as I'm getting ready to leave, our phones just start blowing up, and we start getting messages in our MCTs, from officers saying, "Did you guys feel that?" And we're like, "I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?" and they're just saying, like, "We felt something." They're coming over the radio as well saying, "Central, is there an earthquake that you know of or something that happened? I just felt my car just, like, rumble." And we're like, "What? These guys must be messing around with us." But
Yeah,
then the phones just start exploding, and people are saying the same thing, and
yeah,
it turned out that there was a small earthquake. I mean, it was states south from us, but
yeah,
it was pretty crazy.
yeah, yeah. I've had officers play with me too, like on real dead days or nights, or whatever. And I like the humor when we're able to. So
Mhm.
like, they were running plates and they would do stuff like, okay, license plate is 123 xylophone. So they're trying to see if I was going to do it with a Z, or just little things like that. And when time permits, and we have that downtime, I enjoy that because it's camaraderie, it's team building,
Right.
it's laughing,
Yeah,
so
exactly, and I feel like sometimes that happens right at the moment that it's supposed to happen, and
yeah.
even with phone calls as well. I don't know about you, if you ever noticed this, but for myself, what I noticed at times is that, I would take 3 or 4 crap calls, right, in a row,
Hmm.
and inside, I'm just thinking, "Oh, please let the next call just be something else." And it might be another bad call or whatever, and then out of nowhere, a call will come in that is so off the wall, or funny or outrageous or
Hmm.
whichever, that I'm thinking the dispatch universe knew I needed that call to
Yep.
break up the
Yep.
craziness that is 911, and sometimes it just happens at the right time.
It's like sometimes getting the truly, definitely 100% intoxicated uh, college student that's calling for absolutely no real reason and is like almost totally incoherent, and you are doing everything you possibly can not to laugh
Right.
because it's recorded. And I always tell my people when I train them, if you ever get calls like that, stab yourself, do whatever you have to till you are off the phone, and then laugh as hard as you have to. But yeah, because some of those, uh, they're just truly hilarious.
Right.
Just, so,
Yeah, I
yep,
had a couple trainees too that I would tell the same thing. Like, if you're gonna laugh about something, make sure you do it once the call is over,
right,
but also remember to hang up the phone, like
right,
hit the and make sure the call is completely done, because
right,
even if the other person hangs up, it's still hot. It's still
right,
being recorded. And I remember
yep,
one trainee was like, "No, you're just saying
yeah,
that to me to freak me out." And I said, "Okay, watch this." There was no phone call. I pick up the handset and I just start talking into it, and I wait a
yep,
couple seconds, put it down, and I said, "Okay, open up your playback." And then
right,
they played it back and they just
yep. And if you're in a multi-person center, make sure the other person's not on the radio or the phone.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
the other thing too, because
Yep.
there's been times where you end up taking a phone call, right? And the caller can hear others
Right.
laughing or talking or whatever in the
Yep.
background, and they're like, probably thinking, "Are you guys laughing at me?" But it's not. It's just in that
Yep.
room, we're close enough that
Right.
you have to be aware. You gotta use that
Yep.
dispatch ear to stay aware of everything that's going on at the time.
Yep.
Oh, it makes me miss the job. The profession, just all of it.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about some of, the training, how you got into it, and which the training, there really wasn't much of anything in the beginning. But again, a lot has changed since that time. And in some places, you do have to be certified with so many hours before you can be a dispatcher, a call taker, in different states. Or also, if you're a center that does EMD, which is emergency medical dispatch, that's another certification. You got to
Yep.
go through all that time. You got to take those tests. And in some places, my dispatch center specifically, the last one that I was at that time, we still had the cards.
Yep.
So, now they have it electronically. They have the Pro QA version of it where it's all electronic. But for those who are watching and listening, the EMD or emergency medical dispatch, this certification that I'm talking about, it's what we need. It allows us to take these medicals. But for me though, when I had those cards, you go off of those super fast questions that you're
Mhm.
asking and you determine which card to go to next, and you continue reading, the script that's there to go through it to help the person that's calling in until EMS gets there. So it seems like a lot, but it happens so
It's
fast and you
like,
get
yeah,
so used to doing it that it's just like clockwork, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, I can tell you, like, what I've done when I was in Kuwait.
Hmm.
Uh, the requirements for Department of Defense um, telecommunicators
Yeah.
uh, was different than most municipal, county, or state. So my training programs have always met or exceeded their standards. So
Perfect.
everybody gets a 40-hour course.
Hmm.
Everybody gets EMD. The last department I was at, we have ProQA, but we also have 5 brand new card sets because if ProQA goes down or if it's one of those oh crap and go moments, we have those card sets. They all get their incident command systems, they get their 100, 200, they get their NIMS, and they get their 800.
Oh, the
Um,
NIMS.
yeah, they get their hazardous material awareness because in Department of Defense you have to have that. They get their active attack, active shooter, whatever you want to call it. They get their weapons of mass destruction, emergency uh, terrorism awareness for emergency responders. They get a railroad safety, responding to railroad incidences, and a couple of other things. And then they have department specific stuff. But those are all the certificates. So whenever I've done, I've so this would have been my third center that I've done that at. Um, when I was in Connecticut, when I came home from Kuwait, I created and started up and ran for 5 years a semester-long college program that included all that for people who wanted to become dispatchers, and I was able to obtain credits for that course. So people were able to get 2 credits for that course. And in Connecticut, the state of Connecticut, their 911 people met with myself and one of the college executives and said, this meets and exceeds even our standards, which good, that's what I want. Having it here in New York meets and exceeds their standards. In New York, you have to have the 40-hour, you have to have the EMD, 200 hours of formalized on the job training, 21 hours a year of in-service training and stuff. But there's no one in New York that is, there's no check and balances in New York for that. So,
Wow. So that's a lot of stuff. And
yeah.
with all of that you just said, how crazy is it that 911 dispatch is still seen as administrative?
Right. Yeah. It's crazy when that happened a couple years ago, or God, it's probably been even longer than that. It boggled my mind. New York, they're considered first responders now,
Mhm.
but that is just a pat on the back. There's nothing behind it.
Right.
So there's still a lot to do. Um, with everything. Retirement, I would think, is something that they would want to work on. But it's something. It's a lot more than a lot of other states have.
Right.
I know Massachusetts has been working on it for years. The funny thing is, back in the 60s and 70s, the dispatchers were in the same retirement group as police and firefighters. But then, because of wanting to save money, they changed everything. They put them into the same retirement group as secretaries and librarians, except for I think maybe 4 or 5 fire dispatch centers because they're considered fire alarm operators. So those people are civilian fire alarm operators that are
What?
in the same retirement group as the firefighters and police officers. So what Massachusetts is really asking for is not anything new. They're asking for what was,
Right.
where everybody else is pretty much asking for something brand new. But being designated as a first responder is the first step. It's just, you got to keep pushing, you got to keep fighting.
For sure. And
Yeah,
and that's why, conversations like this and the resources that are out there now are so important so that people can learn more and understand and, just continue to be educated and get that
right.
information. Now, with you having, about these 31 years in public safety, which is awesome. I've got 22. So
Mhm.
we're not too far, but
Right.
you've got this time in there and everything. How do you feel like with everything that you've been through, the stuff that we've talked about and all this, which has been awesome to have you on here to hear all of this and just your thought process, which I think is people need to be thinking more the way you're thinking and the way you're doing things. This is awesome. But how do you feel like the profession has kind of changed you in a way?
Uh, you know, I think my life filters have changed. Um, some positive,
Hmm.
some not. I'm, a skeptic. My girlfriend saw on social media somebody she knew who posted the other day goodbye, which I think you and I both know what that means.
Right.
And it kind of blew up within her circle about, can anybody get there? And I'm like, F that, find out where she lives, call the local police department and get somebody's ass over there.
Right.
That's the priority.
Hmm.
So, I think that way all the time. I am worst case scenario a lot. I don't like crowds. Um, but I've grown. I've learned a lot about myself because of critical incident stress management stuff that I'm trained in. I think for the most part, I'm a better listener. Um, but my filters are different. Like I've spent a year and a half over in Kuwait, living on the economy, setting up a 911 center for the U.S. military. Now, my experience with the Middle East significantly different than my brother who investigated war crimes in Iraq that dealt with mass graves of children, or literally a semi trailer filled with children's bodies in Afghanistan. His filters are significantly different than mine. So I
Yeah.
understand why he feels the way he does towards a certain population where I don't. But it's changed me for the good and the bad, but that's fine.
Hmm.
It's just like my life experiences. I went through a bad marriage. I exited out of that marriage. I came out of that experience much better, much stronger, much happier as a person. So as crappy as things may have been personally and professionally throughout my life, it's what has brought me to where I am now and made me the person who I am now. And I wouldn't want to change it because it wouldn't put me where I am right now. Uh,
Perfectly said. I mean,
you know,
there's a lot of things, right, that we go through in life, and I think there are a lot of experiences that we go through, especially ones that people don't know about, but ones that really put life into perspective and bring us
mhm.
out on the other end. Almost like, if you've seen or if you've watched The Shawshank Redemption,
Yep,
when Andy comes out of that pipe and he's
yeah,
free, it's like, yes, the water coming down. It's one of those iconic moments where you can kind of pinpoint some of those in your life where you're thinking, I can actually
yeah,
breathe again.
yep,
Mhm.
yeah. Great movie, by the way.
Yes, yeah, very good movie. Yes, for sure. So with all of that, those life experiences, the things that happen, the good, the bad, just all of it, there are other things that you dealt with as well. And one of the things we want to touch on here before we go into the wrap up of the episode as well, and if we get a chance, which I definitely want to for this topic, to be able to do a dispatchers roundtable, is just the thought of ADHD in 911 as well. Please tell me about this.
Yeah. I look back at school,
Mhm.
elementary school, behavioral issues. I love Ms. Edwards, my elementary school teacher, first and second grade. Uh, but I was a hyperactive child with emotional issues. So, I was a kid that would like throw books at her shins and stuff. I made her life probably a living hell. Um, but back then, there was no ADD, ADHD. There was no anything. Um, it wasn't until 2002, 2003 that for some reason there was a huge ad campaign, either in Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, or maybe even on the national channels on ADHD self-tests website and stuff. And, for months, I would keep seeing it and stuff. And I'm like, God, a lot of this is just clicking and hitting home. And so I took the test and, it said, yeah, you need to go get evaluated. And I took that to be true because it wasn't like, yes, you need to be evaluated, call us. It just, you need to get evaluated. So I looked up, ADHD, Western Massachusetts, and there just happened to be a center in Springfield that deals with nothing but ADHD. So I went and I got evaluated, and a lot of the evaluation is history, medical history, school history. So it was multiple hours, and I was 100% open about my schooling, needing to see the school counselor in elementary school multiple times a week, to, my interaction with Ms. Edwards, reading teacher, you know, going into junior high and academic skills center in Massachusetts, or at least in Amherst, we had your classes were either advanced, standard, or basics, and all my classes being basic. All that stuff, problems, with studying and focusing, everything. And then there was, cognitive and other tests. And it was like, boom, you've got ADHD. I then immediately went to Kuwait, so I had no prescription. Luckily, I was able to find a doctor in Kuwait, and he was able to get me on Ritalin, which wasn't the greatest, but it was something.
Yeah.
But there wasn't really any tips, tools, tricks, or anything, and having the task that I had, I just didn't really find or feel like I had the time to do any real research or anything. Came home, found a therapist, found somebody to do the medicine. It was a lot of trial and error, not only on type of medicine, but dosage and stuff. And it took several years to figure out what works for me. We found something, and that's what I've stuck with. But I also know that that may not work next year. So I'm constantly seeing both, But you can do this job with ADHD. I was telling you before we started recording that back when MySpace was the Facebook of the day, there was a woman who posted that she was leaving the career because of ADHD, and I just did not get a chance to respond in time to say, whoa, 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 you
Right.
can, let's talk, and, I'm bummed because she could have, and, there aren't really that many tools, tips, or tricks or whatever to do for the job. There are some, but there aren't many compared to, a lot of other jobs, because what we really do is in short bursts. So we're able to hyper focus in short bursts.
Yeah.
But what I like about like the last two positions I've had is I can literally have 3 or 4 things going on my multi-screen computers in my office, multi-projects, even if they're due pretty much at the same time, and go, okay, focus on this one for a little while, get bored with it, go on to this one. That works for me. Doesn't work for everybody. What I have found is that all the traditional tips and tricks and reminders and all that don't work for me, and actually don't work for most people, because we will hyper focus on it for X amount of time and then we fall off the wagon. So I listen to a lot of professionals within the ADHD world that are talking about current studies, current theories, current facts within the last 5 to 8 years. And part of it is time blindness. Time blindness is we're not perceptive to time, dates, and stuff like that. So, that's why I'm always needing to, I knew it was morning when I said, good morning to you, but I had to look because I wasn't 100% sure, even though I, knew it. It's kind of weird. So I have my watch.
Yeah.
I have my phone. I have the time on my computer, because I know that is part of having ADHD. Doing my best to set reminders on my phone. So like APCO had their Atlantic conference this last week.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first got the app, because they send you an app saying, here, use, this app when you're at the conference. So I sent what my schedule was going to be to my girlfriend. And she's like, stop, just tell me when and where. I said, well, I'm telling you now because I might forget then. And at the same time, I was putting it into my phone calendar, which is also on my desktop with reminders. So I need to set reminders of reminders. And to a certain degree, I need to, I want to say color code things, but I find like printing things in color. I see them a lot easier than if it's just black ink on white paper. So I'm able to see it, read it, remember it a lot easier. Reading is horrible for me. I don't like reading because, like most people with ADHD, you will read a paragraph and go, gotta read it again, gotta read it again, gotta read it again. Retention is what my reading problem has been. Not necessarily being able to read, it's comprehending and retaining. So what I found, just like you, my last 2 positions, I went back to college, took some college courses, and I found that, hey, if I either can get my books in PDF format or in some other format, I can have my computer read it to me.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
if it's on Adobe, you can set Adobe to read it to you. So I can either follow along or I can do the wonderful multitasking. And even if I'm listening to it, but I'm over here typing an email, I am still retaining significantly more than I would if I was just reading it. And another thing with reading is I get mentally bored quickly and therefore tired. When it's being read to me, I don't have that problem. So my first 3 months out here, I was traveling 2 hours away in South Central Massachusetts. So it's a 2 hour drive here, 2 hour drive back. Um, um, what is it? Blake Gilmore, who is in the Carolinas. He actually started dispatching way before me up in Franklin County, Massachusetts. I called him up when I got the job and said, hey, I need leadership books. What books? He's like, forget about the public safety leadership books. Go to Disney Institute. He's like, I'll recommend you a couple or whatever. So I got a couple on Audible. Mm-hmm. And I listened to those on the way to work and on the way from work. I retained a lot of the information. It kept me awake. It kept me company. It's finding out, what works for you. And just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for anybody else. But you can do this job with ADHD. There might need to be a little twists or tweaks, over the neurotypical person. But it's okay. And it is, as far as I am aware, under the ADA. There can be some things that can be done, for you within the workplace.
This is fascinating. Like, seriously, I didn't know. Of course I know about ADHD, right? But being in dispatch and with everything that goes on and stuff, how that would be. So listening to you talk about this is just, whoa. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there too who probably don't feel comfortable talking about it because they don't know how it would be taken, right? So everything that you're saying is awesome for others that are out there, for them to feel comfortable as well, to either, talk about it more or, seek any, any help that they might need or whichever. Now, one thing I do want to ask really quick is, you mentioned that you were in Kuwait and you mentioned everything that you were doing over there, right? You're setting up the center and you're doing all this other stuff, but you also mentioned that, I guess in the beginning, right, you hadn't found like a doctor over there yet. So for prescription wise, if you didn't have anything during that time, what was that like for you then? Just how, because, of course the medications, they're helping you, right, for what you have going on. But when you don't have it, what is that like? And of course, as long as you are comfortable sharing.
Yeah. Well, lucky for a couple reasons. I did have my primary over here. I explained to my primary, where I was and stuff. And, pretty much like a lot of European countries, what requires a prescription over here doesn't necessarily require a prescription over there. Ritalin didn't require a prescription. So I asked my primary, what would you prescribe? Dosage and whatever and frequency. They told me, so I went to the local pharmacy, which over there literally is just a pharmacy with maybe NyQuil or stuff. It's not a CVS or anything, which is
right.
Nice. And I picked up what I needed, but I wanted to have somebody there. I wanted somebody boots on the ground. So when I found somebody, so I never really went without from when I was diagnosed. What I'm on now is in and out of your system, typically within 16 hours. What's nice about it too is what I'm on now, a lot of the ADHD meds need to be built up. So you need to always be on it.
Right.
This one you don't. So if I decide Sunday, I am just going to watch the Patriots lose. And I hate to say that, but I've been watching them since the 80s, so I'm used to it. And I don't want to be on my ADHD meds. I can. I don't have to.
Right. Nice. So for myself to understand, and for others who may be watching or listening to understand as well, if you can explain when you're not on it, what is that like for you then? Like, what's the the thoughts or
less
whatever
less
that's going through?
less focused,
Mhm.
less motivated, less energy.
Oh, okay.
Um, so yeah, I can, if I take my med, um, I'm focused. I'm definitely energized. Um, like yesterday, my girlfriend and her daughter went to one of these, pre-Halloween events. So we have a area rug in the living room, and it's getting dungy and dirty. So before they left, I went and got some rug cleaning stuff, and I scrubbed the living heck out of it. I knew I had the energy,
Mhm.
and I had the focus, so I took advantage of it. Um, you know, um, so you know, I need to make sure that that I do use it for good. you know,
Oh, right, yeah.
you know. But sometimes I get like hyper focused, and I feel bad because then Julie will be like, dinner's ready when you want, and I'm like, I don't mean to come across gruff, but I'm hyper focused. Like I was hyper focused on something last night, and she said that, and I knew I sounded gruff, so I said, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read something, and I'm reading and talking at the same time. Uh, but even though I said sorry, it's not right, and that's one of the downsides of ADHD is that type of thing. Just like
Yeah.
I forgot the name of it, but there is a disorder with ADHD where we have a significantly harder time with rejection than the neurotypical person.
Can't even imagine when not having, your med or whichever that's going on, if you have ADHD, sitting there and just kinda not being focused with all this stuff that's going on, I can only imagine it being, pretty frustrating.
It can be frustrating. There
Mhm.
have been times where I've haven't been able to, and it makes me anxious, I guess
Yeah.
you could say. So
And that anxiety's gotta double then because a lot of times in dispatch with the phone calls or anything that might be
right,
going on in the situation, the anxiety is already at a high level, right? And then you add that
yeah,
on top of it and not being able to kind of focus on things, that just boggles
yeah.
the mind.
But
Yeah.
I find there's more strength. So in the role of a leadership position, like an
Mhm.
actual title,
Yeah.
the creativity, the intuitive, being detail oriented, the outside of the box thinking, um, being able to hyper focus, the perfection, which is kind of funny because no matter how many times I proofread something, even if I do it over several days, guarantee there will be something that I always miss. Good in crisis. We are great when we are in crisis, or in a crisis. I shouldn't say we're in a crisis, um, because we can, manage everything. Um, great at problem solving, and stuff, which is, kind of one of my niches that I've always had. Is I've been able to go into centers and stuff like that, and do that. Um, we're constantly evaluating ourselves. We have to get rid of that negative talk, which I've had for a long time, which in the last several years I've been able to erase for the most part. But we are constantly learning or wanting to learn. Um, always have new ideas.
Yeah.
We're empathetic and intuitive, both of which are key in what we do.
Right.
And new ideas, new strategies, new methods, which is also important. in a leadership role, because, just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean that A, it should have ever been done that way, or B, that it's done right. Being able to see things from multiple sides goes a long way, and resourceful. And I know I'm resourceful because my last center, there were a lot of things I had to do on a $0 budget, literally.
You gotta think outside the box then.
Find dispatch console furniture because all they had were desks. I did that on a zero budget. And a couple of other things I had to do on a zero budget, or pretty dang close to a zero budget. I was able to do because of the resourcefulness, the thinking outside the box. So it's being aware of what some of the, I don't want to say weaknesses or negatives are, but some of the areas that we're not that strong at, realizing those, but knowing what the strengths are and aiming and striving at those and concentrating on those. That's what the key is, and learning about those and learning on how they can benefit you as a dispatcher or dispatch supervisor or manager or leader, trainer, and as a human being.
Man, this has been an excellent episode, and I'm so happy that you had reached out and that you signed up so that we could have this conversation. Man, I all of this has been excellent information. Everything that you talked about, from your story, your history, the calls that you've taken, just everything that you've been doing, as well as being dedicated to, even peer support and dispatch and all, but also this topic of ADHD and 911 and sharing your story, sharing your just your experience, so that others who might be hearing this as well, who do have it, who might not want to say anything, they're now going to feel empowered to maybe talk about it more, or to embrace it a little more. And I feel like too, you kind of hang on a little bit to that one person that you saw back on early social media who said that goodbye, that they were leaving, or that they couldn't do it because of their diagnosis. And it was kind of like a mission, it sounds like, that you're on as well, to continue to promote and show that people can do this in any way, even if they're diagnosed with something.
Yeah. I had when I did that college program, I had one of my students who had ADHD came to me saying, he always had problems in high school, which I totally get, was there, and worked with him with test anxiety. Didn't really do any accommodations because he didn't want them, but just worked with him, and he did well. He passed the class with like an 85, got all his certifications, and came to me afterwards saying that it's the best class, period, of any kind he's ever taken, and the best instructor, because I understood, his needs, his issues, his thinking process. I talk about it when I'm teaching academies or training, so it took me a while to want to do that. Not that I was scared or whatever. It's just, to just want to, but I do it. So it's part of what I am, it's part of who I am, and I'm fine with that.
Well, I applaud you, sir, and thank you for what you do, the service that you've put in as well for public safety, and for being on. This has been excellent. I have one last question for you as we go into the wrap up of this episode, which again has been an honor to have you on and learn more about you. If you could go back in time with the information, with the knowledge that you have now, to talk to yourself in the beginning of your public safety career, whether it be in the very, very beginning or the very beginning of dispatch, what is some advice that you would give yourself?
Two things. You got this, and learn from your mistakes. That's something we are constantly telling Julie's 6, soon to be 7 years old. It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
As a 53-year-old, I have failed a lot. Anybody who is successful has failed a bazillion times more than I have. It's okay to fail. Just learn from it.
Awesome. Yes. Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for being on. This has been excellent. And I'm looking forward to the Dispatchers Roundtable that we end up doing on this as well, to have a live audience.
Awesome.
Yeah. That'll be excellent to do. So again, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate you for everything that you do and for sharing your experience.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a great time.
Awesome. Well, I will be right back here with you, Jeremie, in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, this has been awesome. If you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media. You can become a patron of the podcast and help support us. All of the money that comes from the subscription from Patreon and Facebook all go back to everything that I do for a living. It mostly goes to Crowdcast, where Dare to Be Great, 5 virtual event and other virtual events that I put on. It goes towards paying for that and other things that I have going on with the business. So if you want to be a supporter, you can hit us up. It's patreon.com/WTT podcast. And then on Facebook, it's facebook.com/within the trenches podcast/support. But to make it all easier for you, where you can find all the social media, latest episode, where to become a supporter, Imagine Listening, the book, also the store for podcast merchandise, you can go to right there in the bottom left-hand corner, which is links.co/WTT podcast. And again, that is links, but it's with 2 I's. So it's L double I almost said WI. LIINKS.co/WTT podcast. And you'll find everything on there. This episode has been supported by In Digital, a leader Next Gen Core Services. And this can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, X, as well as LinkedIn Live. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.